Hi, I'm Wayne Madsen, and you're listening to the Falcon's Nest podcast.
I'm Lewis Rees, and you're listening to Falcon's Nest podcast.
I'm Anuj Dal, and you're listening to the Falcon's Nest podcast.
Welcome back to the Falcon's Nest podcast. I'm joined by lead strength and conditioning coach for Derbyshire, James Fitzgerald. How are you doing, Fitzy, mate?
I'm good, thank you, Hennes. Yeah, thank you. Second attempt trying to record this, so yeah, not hopefully no disruptions this time, but good, thank you, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're a bit of context. We did try. We got about a minute through before Fitzy had to be dragged away before. Come on to talk kind of about the unknown and unseen kind of part of what the players do, what your role at the club. And you've had an interesting journey, starting off in the pathway and now up into the first team. Yeah,
as I mentioned in the first time we tried to record it, I'm very honoured to be after Smitty, the one of the first support staff to come on. So yeah, everyone else is incredibly jealous. No, but it's been a good journey so far. You know, it's been a difficult one at times, but for sure, I'm glad that I've had the path that I've had. I wouldn't change anything for it. Having those first kind of 2.5 years and still, you know, working closely with Darren and with Hutch still on boys that are coming through and having a say in that is still brilliant. And then, you know, I know Smitty, you know, in our end of season awards the other night, mentioned that it's not what it's about, but ultimately I think to a certain extent it is. You know, seeing guys like Joey Hawkins and, you know, guys like Jake Green and Matty Stewart and those boys play second team and even first team, you know, county championship cricket is fantastic. You know, it almost brings you a bit emotional because, and for a big S&C coach, I'm not really allowed to, but it really does. It really does because, you know, like you mentioned, you know, no one sees a lot of the hard work that we do through the winter, the long hours that we do, and especially last winter just gone was extremely challenging and in the bit of a staff changeover that we had. So in order to see us reap the rewards from that, seeing guys, you know, towards the back end of the season still playing, having a very low amount of injuries towards the end of the season, you know, we're always going to have a few. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the schedule and how intense playing professional cricket is. But to see us where we are now, although it's been a long and arduous kind of 12 months or so, you know, I'm glad we're in the position that we are now. So yeah, very very honoured to now be at the helm, if you like. But yeah, I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, and you talk about low amount of injuries right now. It's almost you've got to start thinking for next season now almost, and making sure that long-term injuries or people who might be susceptible to things when it comes to playing aren't stuck and way behind.
For sure, you're always learning about every single individual player, every single month and every single week and every single day. You know, for example, that there's just some injuries which happen which are out of your control, broken fingers, concussions, as we unfortunately know. So for us, it's about dealing with it on a daily basis, and if we can kind of improve a player ever so much every single day. I know it's a bit of cliche, but ultimately as well, if these kind of freak injuries happen, which does happen in professional sport, you know, you have to adapt to it. And even if it's not an acute injury, as we call it, if it's a little bit more long term and it's been accruing for a little bit of time, that just gives us an opportunity to learn about that individual player and what they need. So yeah, you know, it's always going to be challenging. You know, it's very rare that you're going to have no injuries at all, but we're ultimately every single winter and every single summer we're always learning about how we can make things better. And yeah, and this winter will be very different to last winter, not because we thought that it went badly, but because we thought, you know, there's always bits that we can improve on and things that we need to get done more of a priority than others.
Before we kind of come on to what this winter and 2026 looks like, for people who kind of aren't aware, what's your role with the medical staff, with Ali, through the season, keeping the boys, making sure that they're ready to be match fit and either preventing or catching players up to full fitness?
Yeah, just carrying the drinks, really. No, I'm joking. So
got to get the electrolytes.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? We have a little thing. Zach Chappell started calling the the little kind of table I have in the change room, the Fitz's hydration station. So it was it's got a bit of stick behind it now every single time I set it up. And as soon as like one cup is being drunk up, he's not on it. So, but no, the role differs, very much so from the winter to the in season. I like to kind of say that, all of our hard work and our foundations are built during the winter, and then during the summer, it's their chance to almost let them loose, if you like. So it's almost as if someone's just learning to drive a car, and then you let them loose once they pass a test, really. Similar to what we do from the winter to the summer. So a lot of the more intricate work and the stuff that we have more of a say in, if you like, is probably done during the winter and before Christmas. And then as skills starts to become a little bit more of a priority, then we hand over to the skill coaches. And then very much in the season, it's about maintaining the players who are playing at the opportunities that we can, based on the schedule, as we both know, is incredibly intense. But also for the guys that aren't playing, guys who are playing second 11 cricket, new signings, loan players, it's all about maintaining those guys and making sure they're at the same standard as the guys who play. Because ultimately, like we alluded to, if freak injuries happen, or injuries just happen in general, obviously we do our best to minimise that. That's another thing. Obviously minimising them that we can. You might be able to see in some of the boys wear these kind of black bras, where the GPS units or the units which pick up like how much distance they carry. I can go on and on about them, but they basically just give us a bit of an indication as to where the players are, how much they cover in the course of a given week, and we allowed us to what we call like workload management, which allows us to see where they are across the course of a week, a month, or more normally 6 weeks, which then give us a better idea as to if something might crop up or reduce the amount of risk. Ultimately, we can't control how much a fit player bowls in a given game. That's just dependent on the game scenario, but we just need to prepare them as much as we can for that. And if it means that we, have to maybe put across a bit of a recommendation about how much a player bowls, in a very rare scenario, but in training, not in a game. Mickey will, get angry at me if that were the case, but no, definitely not in a game, but very much so in a training environment. But the coaches are brilliant with that. They kind of they take it on board, and they make their own decisions. But that's from our point of view, where it's just advice, and at that point of view. So yeah, it differs, and I've gone a bit on a tangent, sorry about that, but it differs very much so. And then it's very much around working with Sam, our nutritionist, around both of those to make sure our match day provisions are on point and make sure the guys are fueled up and ready to go.
A lot of gym work that you see the guys do. I'm glad I'm not a player, because the amount of stuff you make them do, and you're not a bloke who I would want to argue with either. Traditional, our members probably think, or you're casting back to the days of Michael Holding, Dominic Cork, who were kind of lean blokes. But then you look at Ben Aitchison, who is a really kind of, all his power comes from gym-based stuff. The game's massively changed in terms of strength and conditioning, and kind of how the gym and weights and weight-loaded training has had a massive impact on that side.
Yeah, I get this question asked quite a lot, actually, because the players used to play a lot more back in the day and do very little strength and conditioning, and still be able to play even more cricket. So I think it's just adapting with the times a little bit as well. I think understanding that the intensity of the games might have increased slightly as well. What's available out there for those players has increased as well. So I can't comment on back in the day because I wasn't there, unfortunately. But from a point that you mentioned nowadays, where someone like H is, if you take maybe another bowler in comparison to H, I think there's a comparison to be made there for the amount of time that Ben spent outside of the game and being able to come in and make the impact that he's had. I can speak for everyone and say that's absolutely remarkable. I think I can tell you probably 9 out of 10 players who would have been out for that long would have probably retired. But for H, I didn't hear him moan once, although he probably moans when he's fit rather compared to when he's injured. But no, he didn't moan once. From what I saw, he came in and just gave everything on every single day, and credit to Ali and to James Bell, to my predecessor for getting him back to where he is today, because he's had a brilliant season in comparison to that. But if you compare him to, very different to someone like a Rory Hayden or like a Nick Potts, they're different bowlers in themselves. So what they need to do in the gym differs slightly. Not too much so, you have your basic structures to what your gym stuff is, but, very much so you can see from the body type they both are, but also the classifications of bowling that they are. And that's almost just relying on people like Ben or Hutch and guys like Ajmal to pick their brains, because if they know, nor do I know about specific bowling analysis, nor they do strength and conditioning, but if you work together, you get that extra 1% out of a bowler. So it's very much around trying to have that collaborative effort as much as we can, and moving forward and trying to make sure that the stuff that they're doing in the hall or outside links to what we're doing in the gym as much as we can. And like I said, the winter is very much our time to have our emphasis and to thrash them as much as we can, and they absolutely hate it on some occasions, but there's some good plans in there. Hopefully the winter there's some fun activities in there as well to stop them moaning. So but no, honestly though, from my experience so far in strength and conditioning and sports science, this is the best group of players I've worked with, but by a comfortable distance. And the effort that they put in for being such a small squad and the amount that they play is phenomenal. And sometimes I have to raise my voice sometimes, and I don't like it, I really don't, or maybe get on a player's bad side, but ultimately I think they realise that it's for their best interest. It's not trying to be like a hierarchy kind of thing. It's not at all. It's just I want the best out of those players, and that's all we work for really, just to get the best out of them.
I want to kind of touch on, do you have 21 kind of different individual fitness plans, or is it the bowlers will be kind of similar? Because I'm thinking someone like Ben and Nye are similar-ish, and then take Brooke and Rory, similar builds, those two pairings, but massively different roles that they have to do throughout the season. Are they on almost completely different fitness plans throughout the winter and the season?
Yeah, I mean, not just from a role-specific point of view, but a person-specific. If someone's had a previous injury, for example, there might need to be a slight bias towards that particular injury that they've had to try and make sure that doesn't happen again. The specific role which you might need to work for, so it's Nye, who's almost, I hope they won't mind me saying, has very much become, a batter who's the second keeper. So he's probably changed slightly in the sense that he's actually able now to change his body type slightly to be able to hit the ball further, and hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, not saying we've changed Nye into what he's doing today, but hopefully it's contributed that over the course of the winter, and we've already had conversations about things that he wants to, because hopefully he's seen that improvement. Before, when he got, he's obviously had quite a few injury struggles in the past, so when he came here, he very much told me that he was very open to kind of reevaluating where he was, and obviously sticking to his guns, so to speak, to get the runs, basically. But no, Nye is very different to even someone like a Guesty, who are very, very similar roles, but Guesty is, if you see Guesty in the gym, he's an absolute, powerhouse. He's not someone who's going to lift the most amount of weight, but gosh, he moves it fast and he moves it very powerfully. So, you almost work with individuals based on their own characteristics. Like I said before, you might have the same framework as to maybe what exercise you choose, or what theme you're trying to get. So if it's a strength block or a power block, but ultimately you make slight adjustments from that framework that you have to individualize it. So yeah, there is almost 21 or 22, depending on your squad size, different programs, but you always come back to the same framework, and it gives you the best results when you stick to that. As long as you start going away from it and starting to change too much, I think then the players start to suffer and see too much change all at once, if that makes sense. So it's also interesting depending on their training age as well. So if someone like Rory and Amrit, who haven't been in maybe as long of a professional setup or even an academy setup as long as someone like Harry Moore, Yusuf, Nick Potts, that they might need that little bit of extra time to get used to the intensity of the game. So, speaking to them and trying to establish at what we call it training age. So, someone's a certain amount of years old, but they're also a certain amount of time and years that they've been in the gym or training in general. So it's working with that and making regressions or progressions from there.
Just before we touch on your plans for the off-season, I know a lot of people will be wondering how Harry Moore's been going and kind of what his summer without cricket has looked like. People may have seen him doing laps around the field during the One Day Cup, and I know he's been doing a lot of stuff in the gym, but what's his road to recovery looking like, and what has that road entailed?
Yeah, and I alluded to H before, and Harry's very much in a similar pocket to that, unfortunately, where he's unfortunately had two pretty tough years back to back. I think from our whole team's perspective, we're in a very happy place as to where he is at this moment in time. He's almost got that opportunity to do a really good hard amount of graft when he has. And we've seen a great amount of healing from the actual injury itself. And now it's just about making sure that giving him the opportunity that he had compared to last year when he was away for nearly 6 months, it's going to give us that opportunity to work on Harry and make sure that and build him up to a place where he doesn't break down again. Ultimately, we talk about how intense the domestic schedule is, but if you throw international cricket and franchise commitment into that as well from the 100 and things like that, it just makes things that much harder. So we have to work as a team, and it's really, really tricky. It's not just about the gym program and the running program. It's about how that actually fits into certain schedules, and obviously Harry being a very, very high value asset to both us and to England. Hopefully other franchise commitments at some point. It just gives us an extra bit of, not pressure, but an extra bit of eagerness to try and make sure he gets back, but also gets back fit and firing for the foreseeable, not just for 1 year and then breaks down. No, we want him back for his career. It's not just back for a little bit and he goes away for England and then comes back, or plays with us for a bit and goes away. We just want him back firing and being able to play as much as he can within reason, of course.
Yeah, he's someone that I think everyone has really high hopes for, and you've worked with him a lot through the academy, and really kind of disappointing as a spectator and supporter view that he's not being able to play and being so close in the promise. I guess is he massively frustrated of where he is, and how do you you're spending a lot of time with him, how do you kind of keep him almost levelled and prevent him getting massively frustrated in a way?
Well, if he wasn't frustrated or anything, I'd be a bit concerned, really, because he doesn't really care. So, yeah, he is frustrated in certain times, and as you would be. Not taking anything away from H. I'm sure at some stage H was getting frustrated at his point of view, but Morsey is, he has his moment, and then he just cracks on with it. He's really invested into his own program. He asks a lot of questions, which is really good, because then that puts me and Ali on high alert to make sure that we're doing the best that we can as well. And he's almost getting us thinking all the time as well, which is what you need to do. During a rehab process, it's not going to be smooth sailing. You're going to have to make slight changes here and there. So for us, him being that invested into it as well helps us a lot. He's always asking to progress, which is good, because it's hungry and signs that he wants to progress. But obviously there's sometimes where we have to maybe pull the handbrake a little bit, and there's sometimes we speed him up. So now he's in a good spot at the moment. We're just returning him back to kind of low level bowling drills now, where which kind of gives us a bit more of that start of a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, which he's still a little bit of a way off, but it gives us it gives him that fresh bit of hope that he's not too far off being back to a stage where he can do his skill. And he's working very, very hard, and I commend him for all the hard work he's put in.
Looking forward to this winter, your first full season leading the S&T for the men's side. You got any little new things that you want to implement, and kind of the Fitzgerald regime and the Fitzgerald way of maybe different things or things that you want to incorporate or want to go away from?
Yeah, I was very fortunate last year when James Bell moved on. I had a bit of kind of exposure to that before the season started, if you like. So from my point of view, it's good that I've had that now, because I know exactly what I want to incorporate and what I don't, and then me and Ali sit down, or have been sitting down for the past kind of 2 to 3 weeks about what we want to achieve, what he thinks from his perspective we need to achieve. And there's been some tough conversations, and there's, you know, sometimes not nice ones because you disagree, but then you end up agreeing on a not a middle ground, but something which is ultimately best for the players. So we've got a really good structure in place now and a really good plan leading into the time where the boys will have a bit of time off, a bit of a chance to decompress. You know, I'm sure some of the boys might be keeping themselves taken over, but we encourage that complete rest. You know, let the body completely relax. You know, there's some players who are going away, and there's some players who are staying. So it's tough to find that balance, but there's some plans in place to alter some things about how they've done in the past, maybe with intensity of training, pairing that up with skills, and just almost trying to be as specific as we can. I think sometimes, not us necessarily, but there's some programs in the winter where it just becomes a case of, you know, certain types of runs that players do and things like that, whereas it's actually the opposite way around. It's, you know, what is the type of maybe heart rate that you want to achieve with that player or that particular group that gets them the specific adaptation that we want to get. So, you know, that's a very vague example, but it's almost just being as specific as we can and making sure that when they're in here, you know, it's dark. It gets dark quite early. So, you know, it's in a tough space until we get outdoors again. So it's almost about being as specific as we can, so they know that every single thing that we've planned for them to do is for their benefit. And, you know, like I said, hopefully throwing some fun activities in there, which I've had some collaboration with the players about how maybe at the end of the week we can get an activity going where it incorporates and gets everyone involved, which is good. But, you know, like I said, it depends very much so on the group size as well, with some players going away and some staying. So it's very much about adapting to that as well if players change their plans.
Kind of with the guys who go away, are you overseeing their fitness? I know, looking at last year, Jack Morley, Mitch, a couple of others heading to Australia, and then a couple in South Africa as well. Are you constantly in touch with them?
Yeah, you know, speaking of those guys, you know, Jack is someone who I'll mention who's really, really kind of keen in what he does and is always keen to know what he does, and if there's anything new he wants to try it first, and you know, he's always in touch, you know, even when he's here. So it's you know, having someone like that when they go away makes things so much easier. You know, it's just when, you know, some players go away to franchise cricket, it becomes a bit difficult because they're obviously playing, whereas, you know, in Australia it's a bit more relaxed in the sense that they play on, I think it's every other weekend or something like that it is, so they've got a bit more time to work on themselves, but also have that bit of a fresh start. So it very much depends on the player. Depends on what format are going away. We talk about, you know, players going away to Australia, but, you know, we've got Wayne Madsen going to the World Cup hopefully next year, which, you know, throws a bit of a spanner in the works because we need to almost get him ready earlier than everyone else, which is brilliant. And me and Wayne and Ali have spoken and sat down about what we want to work on, getting him back to almost refresh completely before that World Cup. You know, when you know, myself being aware of what the European cricket circuit is like, you know, for Italy to qualify for the World Cup, I was so proud to see that Wayne will be playing in the World Cup. So, you know, that's definitely the focus for him, and you know, trying to work out everything that we can in order to help him achieve that is something which, you know, it's different. And then obviously that varies again if players are playing franchise tournaments, because then, you know, they don't know where they're going to be the next tournament. So, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, with the summer that Nye's had, you know, he's not too far away from one of those either. And it just means that, you know, we're seeing our players play in the biggest stages in the world.